See if we can do this. We'll get YouTube started. We're going to make this work one way or the other. I am not leaving here until I get this fixed, okay? So, all right, I'm going to go over to YouTube. Oh, someone sent me the link already. Okay, good. All right, thank you so very much. Hang on.
If you have type 2.
All right, here we go. I'm going to save this. All right, show 86. I'm going to share this to my notes. I'm now going to copy link. I'm going to post it in notes. I'm going to open notes. All right. All right. Thank you so very much for doing that. Whoever just sent that to me, thank you. I do appreciate that very much. It's very kind of you. Very quick. That's awesome. It's always good to have users who are helpful like that. So thank you so very much, listeners. All right. Let's see if we can do this again. All right. Man, we had connection problems. Everything has gone wrong.
Very much. It's very kind of you.
Oh, I need to delete this.
I really do. I really do.
Oh, how do I delete this? Okay, hang on. Where are my settings? Hang on. Give me 1 second. All right, videos. Oh, it's not listed there. See? No, hang on. Live. Ah, there it is. Well, I'll fix all of that later. We'll fix all of that later. Okay. Yeah, sermon audio, man, the numbers are all... Yeah, things are not working on sermon audio today. Let me tell you that. Okay, hang on. Let me go listen. Maybe. Now it's not even playing.
Okay.
There we go. Test 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, sermon audio.
All right. I think we're good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try to get this set up. Maybe. I'm going to open, just go back here, go back to my notifications. All right. There we go. I think we have that set. I have no idea who's listening to me on sermon audio because nothing is working today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, we're going to do this again. I apologize for having to stop, but yeah, everything was going wrong. So I'm going to try to fix this now and see what we can do. All right, I'm just checking to make sure we're not getting disconnected. I don't know what was causing the disconnect, but seems like we're okay. So if we get disconnected, just remember, once the episode is over, I will upload it and everything will work. Everything will be okay because disconnects does not interrupt the recording process. It only interrupts the live feed. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Have you ever been stuck and then after hours of trying to get unstuck, you just want to give up? You don't even care about being unstuck anymore. You're just like, you know what? The car is stuck. I've been sitting here. The tire keeps digging in. It's now sunk completely into the mud. You know what? I don't even care anymore. Just leave the car here. I'm just going to get out and I'm just going to walk down this long, dark road at midnight and hopefully nothing bad happens to me. Someone can just leave the keys in the car. Someone else can have it. I give up. Okay, maybe you've never been feeling that way to that extent, but man, I have been stuck. I've been trying to get unstuck, and I'm now just frustrated and exhausted and tired and discouraged and angry and mad and despondent. And I don't know, every emotion I can think of that's negative. So we're going to try to get unstuck, but we're going to talk about being stuck first, trying to explain everything that's been going on. And then I'll try to explain how I kind of drove myself right into this ditch. And then we're going to try to get out. All right. And we're going to I'm going to respond quickly to someone who had an idea to get me unstuck. I know that's not how they sent it, but we'll talk about that as well. So are you ready, everyone? We have to do this. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, January the 6th, 2026. It is currently 6:19 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, I tried to do this episode just a few minutes ago. We got disconnected. We were having technical difficulties. So I'm going to try to do this again, which only adds to my frustration, which is not a good place to be. You shouldn't be frustrated when you're getting ready to open the Bible and try to teach, but sometimes life kind of puts you in a situation. So I'm just going to be transparent. I'm probably not in the right frame of mind, but I'm going to still try to do my very best to do something that will be beneficial. But yes, I feel very stuck. It's very frustrating to be January the 6th because I feel like, this should be like a new year and it should feel like, all right, I got a good plan, but I feel very stuck. So there's a lot of things going on. All right. So first, behind the scenes, there has been a development that's getting worse and worse by the day. And that is this. My neighbor has a dog. I believe it's a German Shepherd. It's a big dog. And it barks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It will not stop. Every once in a while, it will. Like currently, it's quiet. I don't know for how long, but it's quiet right now. Maybe because the dog is just exhausted. But 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m, it barks and barks and barks. And I'm not one of those neighbors who cares how loud my neighbors are. They can have parties, they can be loud. For the most part, I don't care. It just doesn't bother me. They can be loud, I'll be loud, great. But this particular situation is starting to become so consistent and constant that it's starting to drive me mad. You try to go to sleep, the dog is barking his head off 2 or 3 a.m. You fall asleep, you get woken up because the dog is barking. It's right next door to my house, So it's just insane. Well, bothering my sleep, I don't get too bothered by that too much, right? Sometimes I will, but overall, I can just handle it, whatever. But when you want to sit down in front of a microphone and go live, you do not want a dog barking its full head off, showing up in the audio. And I know in multiple episodes, I've gone back and listened, and there's the dog barking, there's the dog barking. Now, if it just does it once or twice, okay, I don't think the average listener cares. But if it's just barking constantly, it's annoying. It ruins the episode. And I don't have a lot of solutions, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kind of stuck. Unless I come up with a lot of money and try to get some kind of soundproofing to try to take care of it, I don't have a lot of... I'm going to look for some easy answers, but it's really, that's not the way it should be. No, the neighbor should take care of their dog. And I know what you're thinking. Well, you should confront the neighbor. And you're probably right. The problem is, to confront my neighbor, if I walk out my front door right now, cut across my front yard, go across the little kind of like a little alleyway thing, and I walk over into the front yard of my neighbor, the first thing I'm going to encounter is a big Bronco that says Taylor County Sheriff. My neighbor is the Taylor County Sheriff. Okay, you don't really want to tick off law enforcement by trying to tell law enforcement, hey, you have a dog? I don't know, maybe you take care of it. Maybe you consider your neighbors. Maybe you keep the noise down. You don't really want to get into a confrontation with them, right? That's the last thing you want. They can find then 500 things you're doing. No, I don't want to get into that. So it's just like, do you confront? I don't know. Do you find a nice way going? I've almost wanted to walk over and go, hey guys, if you can't take care of your dog, you could hire me and I'll do your dog walker or something, or maybe you find a home for your dog because they don't go out, they don't walk it, they don't go outside and talk to it. It's just the dog is just locked. I don't know. I don't even know if he's tied up in his backyard. It just barks nonstop. So I'm stuck. What do? I want to broadcast. And not only that, sometimes I'll be sitting here like working, like studying this. Like I've been studying this afternoon, working on the book of Ruth, right? Which we're getting ready to talk about. And while I'm sitting there trying to work, all I can hear is, ruff, ruff, this dog just barking and barking. At some point, you just want to start screaming, would you stop? So it's been very frustrating. And it's not the way I wanted the year to start. I'm hoping something will resolve. I'm hoping other neighbors, like maybe the neighborhood can just say, hey, you may be the sheriff, but don't you think you could just keep your dog quiet? At least maybe during the day, let it bark, and that'll be my problem, right? Because it's not his problem to make sure that I can broadcast, but it is his problem to ensure that the neighbors can get rest between the hours of maybe midnight and 6 in the morning. I'll just broadcast between midnight and 6 in the morning, and not worry about broadcasting during the day. But yeah, so it's been very frustrating, and I know I'm going way too long about that, but yeah, I've been stuck right there. And then to add, while that's going on, I found a sermon that I thought would make for a good sermon review, right? So I reviewed it, and remember the reason I reviewed it? Because it used Ruth chapter 2. And I thought, oh, this would be perfect because this will be a good example or a good chance to address how churches handle the book of Ruth, which I think is majorly problematic, and it typically is a hermeneutical train wreck. So this will give me the chance to address it. So we did the review. I'm going to say it was pretty good. It wasn't great. I think it was pretty good. It at least introduced the problem. So then what I did is after I introduced the problem and kind of explained what churches do, in fact, I'm going to go here right now. I'm going to go to my series. Once I realized, okay, we kind of addressed the problem. Hang on, let me do a refresh here. I can pull up all the episodes. Once I kind of addressed the problem, that was in an episode I entitled Ruth 2 Says What? Ruth 2 Says What? And I thought we did pretty good. But then I kind of felt like, well, I introduced the problem, but I had to acknowledge that there's some weird things going on. I don't want to say weird. There's some things going on in the text of the book of Ruth that at least makes you have to stop and figure out how to interpret this hermeneutically. So I did an episode entitled Ruth 1, Narrative Theology. I introduced and defined what narrative theology was. And I took apart Ruth chapter 1 and I felt really good. I'm like, whoa, that was really good. And I even asked, do I go on to Ruth chapter 2? I didn't even wait for anybody to respond. I'm like, you know what? We need to go into it. Then I thought, well, and this is where I made my fatal mistake. I was like, I know what we'll do. While I'm deciding, do I go to Ruth chapter 2 or not go to Ruth chapter 2, let's deal with the Boaz problem. Because everyone in the church says Boaz is a picture of Christ. Boaz is a type of Christ. And there's major issues with this. Like, how do you even make this work? The text doesn't do that. And so, well, we got to deal with it. So by dealing with Boaz as an individual, I inevitably started dealing with the Kinsman-Redeemer as, we'll say, an office. Boaz as a person serves in the function, role, or office of Kinsman-Redeemer. So I kind of, in that episode, put these two concepts together. Boom. All right. Okay, but now, well, wait a minute. Do I go to chapter 2? What do I do? So then I turned on the microphone and said, you know what? Let's start Ruth chapter 2. So we did an episode called Ruth chapter 2, Naomi. Now, in some ways, what I was trying to do was good, right? Because Ruth chapter 2, verse 1, reestablishes that the story of Naomi is not over and she's still central to this entire book. And that Naomi really serves in two ways. Naomi is the story, the historical narrative of Naomi, her family, everything that's happening to her, and it talks about her individual crises, death, everything happening, and it tells her story. But her story perfectly mirrors the larger narrative of Israel. And the reason we talk about the larger narrative of Israel is because in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. The book the setting of the book is not just Naomi lives within this broader setting, and the broader setting is Israel, God's covenant people, his firstborn son, these people that he's in a covenant relationship with, he has this relationship with. they have been unfaithful to the covenant. And what happens if you're unfaithful to the covenant? Deuteronomy 28 through 30 outlines all the things that are going to happen. There's going to be famine. And so guess what? And in fact, the book of Judges, which is the setting for Ruth, tells the story of Israel being constantly unfaithful, right? God blesses them. They ultimately start sinning. God brings discipline upon them. They find themselves in captivity to some kind of pagan nation. They ultimately suffer. They repent. God delivers them by bringing up a judge. And then boom, the cycle repeats over and over and over and over and over. And one of the key elements of the time of Judges is there's no king in the land of Israel. So Naomi, her story, it tells the story of her life, but it also, in a roundabout way, is telling the story of Israel as her life reflects it, as it demonstrates it. So we really have Naomi as the central character here. So I took the time in an episode to kind of retell Naomi's story, but in so doing, I had to kind of retell what we've already told, right? That we've already tried to establish this. But I felt like I could not just go from Naomi right back. Well, what do I do? If I go to Naomi and we go right back to the Kinsman-Redeemer, right back to Boaz, I've already done that. But at the same time, I have to do that because I've decided to go to Ruth chapter 2. So I'm stuck, but here we are. What we're going to do is try to get unstuck. And all I can do, I could get out of the car, leave the car, and go talk about Kirk Cameron and his annihilationism. Or I could just get out of the car, grab a shovel, and I'm just going to sit here and dig and dig and dig and dig and maybe put some sand down or put something down so I can get the car out of this ditch. But I drove the car into the ditch by not framing the series as, let's start with Ruth 1, let's go to Ruth 2, but I didn't envision it going that way. I kind of here's Ruth 1, that will be, let's just jump to Boaz, and instead of really putting this together in an organized way. All right, now I've already spent 13 minutes trying to explain everything, so all I can do now is, I just got to move forward. We're in Ruth 2, and what did we do in the last episode? And Naomi. And we basically stayed there. So all we can do is try to move forward. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I'm about 5 seconds away from just deleting this entire series, but I'm going to be very depressed if I do that because that's a lot of work. I have spent hours here trying to figure out what's the best hermeneutical approach to Ruth because so many people get this so wrong. I've got to try to put this together. I don't want to delete it all. So but here we are. All right. So in our last episode, we began Ruth chapter 2, verse 1, even though that wasn't the original plan, I don't think. We stayed in Ruth chapter 2, verse 1, because I only wanted to look at the words and Naomi, because I deliberately refused to move past her and to move past, because Naomi, pleasant, turns to bitterness. I didn't want to rush past it because she's like the emotional and somewhat the emotional and theological center of the story, at least up to this point. So when we turn to Ruth chapter 2, verse 1, there's Naomi. She's still empty. She went out full. She came back empty. That's Ruth chapter 1. She's still bitter. She's still vulnerable. She's still without a husband. She's without sons. She's without an heir. She's without any security. And in a roundabout way, by saying, and Naomi, it's kind of deliberately saying, hey, her problem is not solved yet. Let's not move forward yet. Don't forget Naomi. But Ruth chapter 2, verse 1 does something very important. All right? It's going to introduce a category. I need you to understand. It's going to introduce a category before it introduces a person. Everybody wants to just go Naomi to Boaz, but you can't because it introduces a category here, right? Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz, or as the King James, and Naomi had a kinsman. This kind of office, this role of kinsman, of a relative. See, in a sense, it before the story really offers us a solution, it introduces a kind of a person, right? It's a person, but it's a kind of person. It's a category. It's a legal role. It's a family role, right? It's like, there's people, but not everyone serves as a kinsman in this particular case. And the way this is going to work out. This is a very defined role legally, socially, civilly. And so it's really introducing this, all right? And if we don't understand, in a sense, this category, I think we're going to misunderstand the entire book. So before we get to Boaz, I know we spent all of the time on Naomi. We're going to spend the time on the idea of kinsman, all right? And we can just go ahead and write out kind of a full idea. Kinsman-Redeemer. Kinsman is the category of person. Redeemer is what they do. So what kind of person is it? It's a kinsman. It's a relative. What do? They redeem. So let's start. And remember, Naomi serves in these two kind of ways. Her life mirrors her situation within the broader framework of Judges, but in the same way, her life reflects what Israel's going through during the time of the Judges. She's really doing two things. So we're going to have to understand the kinsman in light of those two things that her life is doing. Her life, and it's mirroring Israel's life, if that makes sense. So let's start with what exactly is Naomi's problem, and then we'll see how this all unfolds. All right. So we don't need to spend a lot of time here. Remember Ruth chapter 1, verse 3, her husband dies. I don't have to read it. We've already read it before numerous times. Ruth chapter 1, verse 5, her two sons die. She ends up in Moab, but then she goes back to Bethlehem with no man, no heir, no future. She goes out full. She comes back empty. She goes from pleasant to bitter. And that's where she is. The only positive sign is there is food now in Bethlehem in the house of bread. Now, remember, this is not just an emotional problem. There is obviously emotional problems going on. Everyone's dead. It's not just grief. It's not just sadness. This is kind of the entire lineage, the entire line is going to be basically come extinct. She has no husband. She has no heir. This is going to wipe out the entire line is what it's going to do. And in Israel, this household problem is a pretty significant thing, or we'll call it household extinction problem is pretty serious. If a family line disappears, the land leaves that family. If that line leaves, then someone else is going to get the land. The name is just going to disappear from Israel. The inheritance is lost, and the covenant identity of that household is gone forever. Now, depending on where they fit into a genealogical record, that could have major implications, right? Could have major implications. So, land and family are linked to a law in Israel to try to stop this household extinction problem. You don't want the family to go extinct. Now keep that in mind. Remember, Naomi serves in two ways. She's going to show her role, right? Her life, living within this broader context. Her household is about to go extinct. It could go extinct unless something happens. Israel, well, they keep having major problems, right? Even though they're God's covenant people, they continue to sin. Famine is in the land, and they continue to find themselves under rule of other nations. Is Israel even going to survive? How are they going to survive? Even if you read the Old Testament. I mean, the northern kingdom goes into exile not to come back out. Judah's in captivity. Even when you open the New Testament, Israel's under the foot of Rome. Is Israel going to survive? Are they going to make it, considering how many times they continue to fail? Do they have a possible household extinction problem as well? Right? So you kind of have, again, these two things mirroring each other. So the Naomi crisis is simple. The household is about to vanish from Israel. And that's the kind of problem Israel has a law to try to fix. All right. So Naomi's problem, we can call it, what is her problem? It's a household extinction problem. So Israel needs laws for this kind of problem. And where do we get? We go to Leviticus chapter 25. We go to Leviticus chapter 25. We end up in verse 23. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. Right? So, hey, we can't lose the land because the land belongs to me. God is saying, this is my land. So there's got to be a way to preserve and keep the land. Now, I love that because we're back to land issues, right? I know many systems of eschatology just throws out the land and say, the land doesn't matter. Who cares about the land? The Old Testament cares about the land, right? The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. The land belongs to God. He assigns it to families within Israel, covenant, right? Within tribes, for the nation. And he does not want these families permanently erased. So God builds kind of a recovery mechanism into the law. He's got a mechanism to save the land, to keep the land, because God gives them in the covenant, he makes a promise of land. You can't just throw this out. Whatever system of eschatology you hold to, you can't just say, well, the land doesn't matter. The land was just spiritual. The land was just symbolic. No, the land promises are the land promises. So if you look at Leviticus 25:25, if thy brother be waxen poor and hath sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. There is a mechanism to save this. If your brother becomes poor and sells part of the property, then the nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold. Here's the kinsman-redeemer, right? The redeemer. And remember the Hebrew here? Do you remember Leviticus? Let me go back to, pull up the Blue Letter Bible app. Leviticus 25, remember the Hebrew word?
Strong's H 1350. Gaal.
Gaal. Some say Goel, Gaal, all right? Gaal is the redeemer, the kinsman-redeemer. This is kind of a category. It's kind of I don't know if I should use the term office, but it's not about one particular individual. It's about this office, this idea, this category of there's the kinsman-redeemer. And what is it to do? It's to save, in one hand, the land from being taken, from that land being gone forever. I hope that makes sense, right? And then we see this same thing in Numbers 27 and 36. It's the daughters of Zelophehad, I think is how you say it. Zelophehad, 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 and Numbers 27 and 36. Their entire situation existed because God is concerned that a family name and inheritance not disappear from Israel. All right. So just immediately when we start talking about a kinsman redeemer, it's about land. It's about preserving a family line. It's not about the forgiveness of sins. It's not about heaven. It's not about atonement. It's not about salvation. I know, even though kinsman redeemer, Jesus is my kinsman redeemer, how many contemporary Christian praise songs and songs have used this? Churches love it, but that's not what's going on here in any way, shape, or form. It's about keeping a family alive inside God's covenant nation and preserving property, preserving people, and preserving land. All right? That's a simple way of understanding it. And there's plenty of other scriptures we could look at, but you get the basic idea. Now, the Hebrew word for Gaal means a near relative. So there you go. You have to be a near relative who has the duty to step in and prevent irreversible family loss. Now, please note, it's a near relative who has the duty to step in and prevent irreversible family loss. So according to the law of Gael, they and I'll just go through some of these. We're not going to look up all the scriptures, but you can write them down. They were to buy back land that a family member had to sell, Leviticus 25:25. They were to buy back a family member who's fallen into servitude or basically sell themselves into debt slavery. They're a slave to pay back debt. Leviticus 25:47-49. They were to preserve the family line when a household is about to disappear. Deuteronomy 25:5-10. Hey, this family line's going to be gone. You've got to now marry this person to redeem this person to produce children to protect the family line, to keep it going. And all of this is of great importance in Israel, right? Why? They're God's covenant people. Land has been promised to them. They're to keep that land. And the genealogical lineage is of great importance if you're ultimately going to get to Christ, right? And that's a major problem in Ruth. It's all happening in the day of the judges. What does that mean? There's no king in Israel. Everyone's doing what is right in their own eyes. How do you get to the last word of chapter 4, David, which is going to be king? God's going to make a Davidic covenant with him to bring about the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. How do you get there? This Kinsman-Redeemer. He's going to preserve the family lineage, the family line. And by doing that, you ultimately end up with David. So the core idea here is that redemption in the law means restoration to your place in the family. It's not a salvation from sin. It's not a spiritual rebirth. It's not heaven. It means your land stays in your family. Your name stays in Israel, and your household does not vanish because you're going to produce children. That's what it means. So you can't go running and doing all the crazy stuff churches love to do and praise songs love to do. Stop all of that. This is what it means, very specific in how it functions. Now, how does this work for Naomi and Ruth? Naomi has no husband. She has no sons. She has no heir. She has no secure future. She has no protection against the entire extinction of the family line. So, what does Ruth 2:1 does? I don't think we see it as introducing a hero. It introduces the only legal category that can address this kind of problem. Now what? Now Naomi had a relative. It's not, here comes the Savior, here comes the Redeemer. It's, there exists someone who fits the only category the law provides for this situation. Here, the law provides for a solution, and here is the solution. Here is the solution. But, so that's Naomi and Ruth. They're in this horrible situation. They need a relative, a near relative who will take care of their situation. Preserve the line, produce children, care for them, look after for them. So there's Naomi and Ruth. But remember, Naomi's life reflects Israel. So how does this category belong to Israel's big story? God repeatedly calls himself Israel's Redeemer, their Gael. He is their God. He has got the Gael of Israel. We see this, and a lot of it's in the book of Isaiah, which makes sense because where is Israel? Where is Judah in the book of Isaiah? They're in Babylonian captivity. They're in captivity. They're in a hopeless situation. But what do we see in Isaiah 41, verse 14? Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel, I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am your Gael. I am your Redeemer. I am your deliverer. You can't do it yourself. You need a kinsman redeemer, right? Isaiah 43:1. But now thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. This shows this closeness that God has with Israel because he's in a covenant relationship with them. He's going to be, he is their redeemer. He is their Gael. Isaiah 44:6. Thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first and the last, and beside me there is no God. Isaiah 54:5. I mean, we could go through the entire Old Testament doing this. Isaiah 54:5. For thy Maker is thine husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah 63:16. Isaiah 63:16. 63:16. We read, doubtless thou art our father through Abraham, though Abraham be ignorant of us, and Israel acknowledge us not. Thou, O Lord, art our father, our redeemer. Thy name is from everlasting. Israel's father. Again, father, because Israel is his firstborn son. There's the near closeness, the near relative. So why does God use Gael specifically in regards to Israel over and over and over and over? Well, the easiest solution, or the easiest answer, is Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Well, if Israel is God's firstborn, then they're near relative, are they not? Okay, they're a near relative. They're his family. They're his covenant people. And they're in danger of, well, they are. They're scattered. They're going to be erased. They're going to be lost. So they're going to need a Gael, just as, again, Naomi's life reflects everything going on with Israel. She's not a symbol of, she's a literal person, literally living the story in her own life. So this kind of same family preservation category is used for God's covenant work with Israel. And then in the New Testament, the language doesn't stop, right? Luke 1:68, blessed be the God, or blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people. Matthew 1:21, he will save his people from their sins. All of that is Israel-centric. It's about his covenant people. This is not abstract. This is not generic spirituality. It has a very clear meaning here. Now, I want to make this very clear here. I've got to make sure this is clear. I'm not turning Ruth into an allegory. I'm not doing that. I'm not turning every redeemer into Jesus. I'm not doing that. I'm not turning every rescue into some kind of a rescue from sin. I'm saying this is what this word, Gael, and its institution, this is how it exists, and this is what it does in Scripture. And I'm applying it and making it very clear that I'm getting this from Scripture, all right? Now, so we can say, now without any confusion, we know what kind of problem Naomi actually has. Basically a household extinction problem. We know what kind of solution the story is even talking about, the Gael. We know what kind of role someone like Boaz could possibly play. Now, Boaz will have to meet the criteria of being the Gael. Now, he's the person. He's the person, but the category is the Kinsman-Redeemer. So, now let's read it. Let's go back to Ruth chapter 2. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a mighty man of wealth, and a family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. So, kinsman has to be a near relative, check. Now, this near relative is going to have the means, right? Kinsman of her husband, a mighty man, there seems to show power, maybe prestige, maybe a notoriety. We could get into what it means to be a mighty man. A man of wealth, gonna have the financial means to do this. of the family of Elimelech. There's the close relative, and his name was Boaz. Boaz is the one that fits this category. He's a kinsman redeemer who has the power, the position, the might, the strength, and the wealth in order to be the kinsman redeemer to save Naomi, or to redeem Naomi from basically household extinction, from the family line being gone. And in doing this, well, it's going to fix Israel's problem in really two ways. Think about it. What is Israel's problem? There is no king in the land. There is no king in the land because of Boaz redeeming Naomi, and of course, with Ruth, right? All right? He's going to redeem them. He's going to go through all the things he's supposed to do, especially Ruth in this particular case, right? He's going to redeem Ruth. I mean, Naomi's still the central figure here, but you get the idea. She's the one who has the relative who can step in and now save them all, right? But he's going to do so by, obviously, we know how he's going to work with Ruth. We'll get into the story further. But the end, what happens? Solomon begat Boaz, Boaz begat Obed, Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. We get David. There's the king. That's it. This fixes the immediate problem for Naomi and Ruth. He shows up. He provides. He's going to marry Ruth. All the problems are going to be fixed for them personally. It also fixes Israel's immediate problem. There is no king. Well, you're now going to get the king that God is going to establish the Davidic covenant, which will ultimately lead to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And ultimately, the kinsman redeemer demonstrates what God will ultimately do for Israel by coming to redeem them. He is their redeemer. He is their kinsman redeemer. Doesn't apply to us because he's not my kinsman. I am born a child of the devil. I am not in covenant with him. Now, someone said, but Israel, an Israelite is born a child of the devil. Yes, but it's still a close relative to God because of covenant, because of the covenant. Israel is God's firstborn. They're still in a covenant language. But from a soteriological, theological perspective, they're a child of the devil. But in a covenant sense, they're still his child covenantly speaking. They're going to have to be redeemed. And they qualify because he is their near kinsman, their near relative, because they're his firstborn son. I am outside of the covenant, outside of that hope. And when God establishes the new covenant, he makes it with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. But for me, he saves me. And by saving me, I'm adopted into the family of God. I am grafted into Israel. I'm part of the family of God by being adopted, not because I was a close relative, but he saves someone who's far away and brings me close and makes me a son. For those who received him, gave them the power, the authority to become the sons of God. Not that we were, but we become that through salvation. Israel is God's son by covenant. So kinsman redeemer fixes Naomi's immediate problem, fixes Israel's immediate problem. I mean, it's going to take a little while, but they don't have a king. They're going to ultimately get David. And ultimately through David, you bring Christ, which is going to be the ultimate solution to Israel's problem because he's going to redeem them. Ultimately, they will all be saved. And we read that in Romans 11. And then we can read about that in the New Covenant language as well in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. So, what have we done? Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. Boaz is the man, the person who can fulfill the role of kinsman redeemer. He can fulfill it. Now, we could spend a lot of time on what Boaz does and doesn't do. We can't make Boaz Jesus because that's not, the New Testament never does that in any way, shape, or form. Never even comes close. All right. Now, can we say, does Jesus fulfill the role of kinsman redeemer by ultimately redeeming Israel? We could get into that, but Boaz is not Jesus in any way, shape, or form. Does he do similar work than Jesus did? Even if we apply it that way, it's about Israel. It's not about us. So we'll have to see then the rest of the chapter, how this plays out. All the steps that are taken. Because in a roundabout way, the rest of the book is simply the very procedural process of Boaz ultimately redeeming them, doing the office of the Goel. It becomes very procedural. It becomes very, and we'll just walk through each section. I don't know what else to do. At this point, we're so far in, we have nowhere, we're just going to have to stay here until we get, I don't know what else to do. I've tried to frame this in the best way possible. So there's Naomi, which, remember, she serves in two ways. Her life lived within the context of covenantal failure in the time of the judges. She's living in the midst of that, a real life. But her life also mirrors perfectly the covenantal failure that Israel has experienced during the time of the judges. She needs a kinsman-redeemer. Israel will need a kinsman-redeemer. Israel, and ultimately, God fixes the problem for Naomi, right? And for Ruth, right? And he ultimately fixes Israel's problem of not needing a king, or of not having a king when it gets to David. But ultimately, that all points forward to the bigger thing. Israel's going to need to be redeemed. All right. I don't know what else to say. I'm going to stop right there. Thank you so very much. Yeah. I feel like I should have done more, but I mean, that's all you can really do. So now I'm not, for the next episode, I'm not going to do another one today. Well, maybe I'll do one later tonight. I'm not going to do one on Boaz. We're just going to start walking through the actual procedural process and how this plays out, because it plays out in a very just clear, here's what happens here, then here's what happens here, here's what happens here. If there's any parallels, then we'll try to find the parallel. We'll see how this plays out for Naomi and Ruth, how it may ultimately play out for David becoming a king for Israel, and how it ultimately plays out for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, who ultimately will, redeem Israel. So there you go. All right. Thank you for listening. The dog didn't bark. So that's a good thing. Maybe that problem if that problem gets resolved, that will make things a lot easier, because I can just turn on the microphone whenever I want. I don't have to worry about it. I don't think we had any connection problems. So that's a good thing. So I don't know what to say. I'm not going to say it went good. I'm not going to say it went bad. I'm just going to say it is what it is. All right. God bless.